My name is Moono Mupotola. I'm the Division Manager for Trade and Regional Integration at the African Development Bank.
And tell us a little bit about the bank's mission.
Well, the bank's mission is really twofold. Under its 10-year strategy, which was put into place last year, we have two twin objectives. First one is inclusive growth and also moving towards green growth. We have 5 main areas of focus: regional integration, infrastructure, governance, skills development, and infrastructure. And we are really focusing 60% of our investments or our loans are really focused on the infrastructure sector, but increasingly we are now looking at how to bring in what we call the soft infrastructure aspects, which include policies, capacity development, and technical assistance to actually support some of these hard infrastructure investments that we make within the in Africa in general. We're also now realizing that with building infrastructure, we need to say, what are we building the infrastructure for? And really the focus has been looking at improving Africa's competitiveness. You know, how do we make Africa much more attractive? But going forward, really to say, from where I sit in my unit, how can Africa enter the global market? Right now, our trade numbers are very low. If we look at our participations in global value chains, it's only at 2.2%, which is very, very low. And we want to increase those numbers. And I think what's also very important for us as ADB is looking at the context in which Africa is at the moment. As you know, the narrative of Africa is rising. We have a growing middle class, which we expect by 2020 to have a spending power of about $1 trillion US. So already this gives us impetus to try and see how we can develop products that will be able to cater to this growing middle class. But at the same time, we also want to connect with global value chains. We look at the dividend, the youth dividend that we have, and trying to get jobs for these youths. And we see it as one area of really getting jobs created. But in order to do that, we need to understand what the various global value chains entail, what is the relationship between state and firm, the relationship between economic integration and also social integration, and how do we make it all very inclusive.
Yeah, related to that, I mean, how does the GBC framework help you produce analysis in that regard that's maybe more relevant than non-GBC analysis?
I think for us, what the GBC analysis does, it gives us the opportunity to look at a whole product, for instance, or sector from its entirety. So for example, while we focus mostly on building infrastructure, we also need to know, fine, we look at a global value chain that looks at horticulture. What are the bottlenecks that affect horticulture? What needs to be done at institutional level to ensure that this horticulture value chain is able to function properly? What do we do with the skills that are required in horticulture? So the GBC framework makes it possible for us and in our work to look at this whole, to look at development of particular sectors in a very holistic manner. And that way it helps also in the work that the bank does, bringing in the various elements. We are in 38 African countries, but it also makes it possible for some of the policy dialogue that we have with our regional member countries, making it possible for us to then help them look at the development of some of these sectors in a much more holistic manner.
You participated in a panel this morning. Was there anything mentioned in that panel that you thought was particularly revelatory? And on the flip side, was there any perspective that you brought to that panel that you maybe thought hadn't been appreciated or wasn't appreciated by some of the other participants or by people in the room?
Well, maybe I'll begin with your last point. From my perspective, I think it's the appreciation of some of the progress that African countries have made, particularly at a regional level in regional integration, and the fact that the African countries themselves are taking on this responsibility of ensuring that issues like global value chain as something that they look at regional level, and there's actually a very big interest coming from African countries, and also really the appreciation that despite all some of the challenges that are still faced in Africa, African countries are very interested in joining global value chain and developing global value chain. I think that appreciation is something that I was able to articulate. From what I learned, I think it's I can't really pin it down to today's discussion, but also generally from the conference, really has been to look at really look at value chains based on, not just based on sectors, but to look at the comparative advantages of countries, for instance. For example, there's a natural resource value chain. What is required in a natural resource value chain is very different from what is required in a manufacturing value chain and what is required in a services value chain. I think that appreciation was well articulated by various participants at the conference.
Looking forward, for your organization, you've identified some of the challenges that you're working to overcome: the soft infrastructure, the jobs creation for the younger generation in Africa. What do you think will be the most pressing challenges for the next 3 to 5 years, and maybe how will the GBC framework help to address some of those challenges?
For me, the GBC framework, what I'm hoping to use it in the next couple of years is really to use it for the demonstration effect. And I say this because it's very important that institutions like Duke and others actually do the analytical work. But I think the implementation of some of these analytical work is very, very important. And this is where we look to this partnership that you help us in developing these frameworks, and then we work with the countries in trying to implement some of these frameworks that have been identified. So for me, going forward, really, I want to use the framework first to identify and map what the key value chains are at sub-regional level, so looking at the various sub-regions and seeing which ones we should be developing, and then identifying what the bottlenecks, what the challenges are, and that should be able to inform the type of programming and support that the bank provides to member countries.
Great, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.